very little in the way of direct sort of harassment. No one has ever called me a weirdo or a freak, which is good. Early on in transition, I had people who would, point and snicker and laugh, and usually, you try to let that run off your shoulder, but there were some times that where that was very painful, and it gave me an insight into how people who are discriminated against feel, and there were times in my life where I discriminated against, say, people of color or Jewish people. And I never thought about it as a child that I was hurting someone. I felt righteous in so doing. And I know that that's how people feel today about LGBT people. Part of why I want to get the story out there is to say in a very human way, this does hurt. So, when a person would engage in that kind of rhetoric, it is hurtful. But there are a couple of anecdotes that come to mind. One was, I had my former brother-in-law say that very kind of rhetoric where, God made you a certain way and, you can't change that. Now, never mind disease or birth defects or deformities that people change all the time with nary a raised eyebrow. And people in that circumstance would challenge me in my need and decision to transition as a choice, rather than viewing it as sort of something that was wrong from birth in me, this sensation of disconnect between self-identity and physical identity, which is as apt a description of gender dysphoria, I think, as I can come up with. So that was one anecdote, and that was hurtful, but you come to a place where you just realize that not everyone gets it, automatically. Not everyone can be expected to view it the way I have come to know it internally as, there's just something wrong with me. And there has been something wrong with me my whole life. And in order for me to continue to live any kind of life, I need to fix or get fixed, what's wrong with me. I need to be able to present to the world in a way that's congruent with how I identify and how I feel myself to be, in this case, as a woman. So that was the first circumstance. Probably of far greater importance to me was the religious significance of gender transition. Because I was born and raised Catholic, went to Catholic school throughout my life, and at one point was a born-again Christian and very evangelical and fundamentalist in my beliefs, what I would refer to as a biblical literalist, meaning that everything I read in the Bible is true. So there are a couple of passages in the Bible that talk about the body being a temple of God and that we cannot desecrate it. And people would view, gender correction surgery as desecrating your body. I don't think so. I see it as a medical procedure that corrects something which was wrong. I really struggled with that for most of my life and felt that it was very wrong and sinful to even have the thoughts about being a woman, having different genitalia, having breasts and a vagina instead of a penis. That was wrong to even think that. And yet I could not avoid that thought, those thoughts. They came to me all the time. So I longed for breasts, for many, many, many years. So, you go through that pitched struggle back and forth, throughout your life. And at some point, you have to, you pray to God and you say, God, take this away. take this sin away from me. And I believe that God answers all prayers. Sometimes the answer is no. And that's a hard thing for us, to learn. So after 48 years of uncertainty and fear and ambiguity and doubt and guilt and shame about something as fundamental as my self-identity, I finally concluded that the answer to that prayer, that God remove this sin from me, was no. That this is who God made me to be. In whatever way we believe that God makes people. So that's, how I came to find myself when I was 48 years old. And it was saying okay to God as much as saying okay to myself. That it's okay to be who I am. And an interesting part that I write about in the book is that the only way that I can describe this is as sort of a vision, because I was sitting in church getting ready. It was about a month before surgery, maybe 6 weeks. And I was sitting in church at a Lenten service, very quiet, very peaceful, very sort of self-contained and at ease. And I just emptied out my mind of everything that I was thinking about. Had no fear about surgery, had no doubts about it. It was the right thing for me to do. The only thing I didn't have at that point, I felt, was God's blessing. Some way that God would tell me that this is the right thing for me to do. And as I sat there, just sort of, I wouldn't even say meditating, but just very calm, they began playing, a pianist and a flautist began playing this very plaintive recitation of the song Ave Maria, which is very melodic anyways and very beautiful music. And as they began playing, and I was sort of almost entranced in this calm and peaceful place, I saw myself dancing. And I was wearing all white cotton flowing, blouse and gown, and not really a gown, but a long skirt and, a blouse. And as I was dancing and twirling around, I saw a young man approaching me, and very contemporary looking, dark hair and dark eyes, olive skin, and he was walking towards me, and I knew it was Jesus. And as he approached me, he held out his hand, and he said, "Would you like to dance?" And he smiled. And I thought, oh, I have my blessing. This is okay with God. This is God's will for me. So I get that now. And so each of us have our own personal journey to God, whether we're Muslim or Jewish or fundamentalist Christian or Catholic or Hindu or whatever we are, even if we have no religion at all. I think it's a personal journey, and my God, and I'm Judeo-Christian, my God tells me, I love you too.